So how do I get there? And what do I have to do to be able to begin this process of playing without forcing a response? Well, if we can look at that sign over there, it says exit. Okay, and what happens when you read exit?
You hear it.
You hear it where?
In your head.
You hear it in your head. Okay, and if we were to close your eyes and I'd say spell exit, what would happen? You'd see it upstairs, right? Okay, so all words are simply what?
Symbols of sound.
Symbols for sound, okay? And when we read exit silently, we hear that sound in our head, okay? Well, we're dealing with music, and it's another language, and again, the notes on the page are simply what? Symbols for sounds. So the question is when you're practicing, when you're working on developing yourself, are you hearing with your eyes? Because that's what we just did when we read exit silently, didn't it? Or when you read a book, you hear with your eyes. Okay, and if we were to close our eyes and I said spell exit, you could see that. We want the same effect when we listen to music. Can I write it out from hearing? If I can develop those skills, I'm going to be a totally different trumpet player. Think about the ramifications if you can look at something and hear it before you play it. What's going to happen when you have to sight read?
It'll be easy.
It's going to be a lot easier. Are you going to be nervous when you have to stand up and play a solo? Well, you'll probably be nervous, but maybe not as nervous because you know what it sounds like, okay? Or in a rehearsal, if you can hear it before you play it, are you going to be able to learn it quicker and play it at a higher level sooner? So this development of a sound associated with a symbol. Let's go back into your past for a second. So in first grade, the teacher put MOM on the board. Well, did she want to hear 26 or 30 moms come out of the class? She did, but I mean, you know, what's the purpose? How long had you been saying mom?
Since we could talk.
Probably since you could talk. It was maybe probably one of the first words other than no that came out of your mouth. Okay? So what we want then is the teacher knew that you had that sound in your head, and she put a symbol on the board, and she wanted you to relate that sound to a symbol. Okay? So as trumpet players, what we want to do is when we look at music, we hear the sound in our head, and that activates the correct physical response. Now, could all of you say mom for me? 1, 2, 3.
Mom.
Did you think about your breath? Did you think about your tongue? Did you think about your lips? No. What activated all those activities? The sound of mom. Okay? So that's a very simple example of what we want to do when we play the trumpet. Now, that didn't happen overnight. And as you're a little kid, you had really funny words here and there. And through the process of learning, you learned other words. And now you're able to speak and write intelligently, okay? Or we hope. Right? So what I'm after here is that the trumpet is very much the same path of development. So what I would suggest is that a couple things. Is that as you're learning to play or you're trying to reprogram maybe how you address the instrument, that I would encourage you to look at every single note that you hear on the page as sound, okay? How do you verify that you're hearing the sound? What do you have to do? You have to sing it, okay? Because if you can't sing it, then you're really not hearing it, okay? So what I would have a student do is actually sing the pitch and then try to play it. So I'm playing for what I hear in my head. And eventually, the student does struggle with that at the beginning, but they eventually start relating a sound to a symbol. Now, let's try this real quick. If we're in a band room, and let's say we're in a group, on the count of 3, say your name. 1, 2, 3. Now this time say your name and see if you can hear somebody else say your name. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear somebody else? Why? You're listening for it, or the big reason is you know your name. You don't have to think about your name. So you're free to listen across this area to hear somebody else's name. So we go back to music. If while I'm playing, I hear the sound and I can hear my sound, now I am able to hear across the band. I'm able to match articulation, intonation, dynamics, phrasing, because I'm free from just hearing my part. And if you're a player and you go back and realize, in the times of stress, I got laser vision on my part and I'm not really worried about anything else, well, that may be okay for you, but it actually doesn't help the ensemble. So these concepts that we're talking about, basic concepts, development of hearing sound versus other activity, will really develop you as a very good trumpet player and make you fit into a section much easier and work in an ensemble, and certainly as a soloist too. One of the things that we want to get going here then is that we play from hearing sound, okay? So I would have the student sing it, back to that G, and then maybe move it a half step away, da, and keep expanding away from that, but keeping the sound the same all the way through. A very simple exercise. And keep the student's mind buried in the sound. Transposition is a good way to keep your head in the sound too as you develop. So in conclusion here, the trumpet is a tube. Basic, simple explanation of it. It is a tube. What happens to make the sound work is we have to energize the air molecules, okay? One of my physicist colleagues here on campus said the way that we get a sound going for a student is that they have to hear that, and then through trial and error, like we talked about the bicycle, they learn that that sound goes with this activity. But just like we said when you said mom, they have no idea how the mechanics of it, they're able, because of sound, to reproduce that, okay? So we want to make very sure that the student develops from that standpoint. So we know it's a tube, we know we have to energize the air molecules, we know that that process occurs when we're blowing. So as I demonstrated with the flame, this sound is white noise. Same thing we got with the flame. If I take this tube out and I try doing this, if I can get in a little quicker, I won't run out of air as fast, but I would try that at home. For you guys that like to buzz, and you can buzz a scale, great, but we're not playing mouthpiece, and actually the mouthpiece doesn't have a long enough tube to create a standing wave, so you're free to do that. But once we put it in a tube, then it becomes much more difficult, virtually impossible, to play a scale because you're fighting the tube, okay? So this is made of metal, this is flesh, the metal always wins, right? So in our development, I would have a student work so that they're going and just learning how to blow. We use a shorter tube, less resistance, get the thing going so that the student is not fighting the tube, and then put the tuning slide back in and see if the student can produce a sound. Again, simply by blowing and energizing those air molecules. If you notice, when you start a student, if you start them this way, most of the time, they're going to blow their face into position. You will not have to talk to them about how to put things where. Now, it may not be developed, it may not be exactly right, but it'll be the initial step, and they won't have to get into mechanics of how the thing works, okay? So, the trumpet is a tube. We energize the air molecules, and that's what makes the sound. I encourage you to read the articles. I encourage you to try the experiments, see if that isn't how the crazy thing works. And I wish you all the best of luck in your future as a musician, and certainly as our journey of learning how to play the trumpet and become better trumpet players as a result of that process. Thank you very much.